Marie. Good morning.
Dear Yuba Water Agency, last Friday at the North Yuba meeting, the general manager said and did some things that point to his intention to not deliver water again for the coming season. In January, he added to the board package a sheet with rain data compared with years of delivery. Apart from the fact that the data for December was wrong, the sheet suggested that there could be only a delivery on years with record rainfall. The last meeting, he added a sheet with Dry Creek flow data that suggested that Dry Creek alone would not give much water to the irrigation supply this year. When he spoke in his manager report, he was very unclear about the reason that he had added those two sheets, told the directors that he just thought, and I quote, they would be interested in these data, maybe. He also more ominously told the board that the State Water Control Board had used the word drought and that the Central Valley project had allocated 0%. Again, he did not elaborate or tell the story about why he told the board these things. He kept it very vague. To us, it sounded like he was laying the groundwork for a denial of service at the next meeting. He will point to those sheets and those two comments, and the board will deny his service again. Here are a few ways to respond. The irrigation system is not designed to be dependent on rain because it's designed for Northern California. The irrigation system is also not designed to be dependent on Dry Creek. In the old designs, Dry Creek was named as supplemental water. It is designed to run with water that is diverted upstream, Slate Creek, and stored in South Feathers reservoirs. It is there. It is designed to go through the Forbstown Ditch, then Costa Creek to reach the Dobbins Organ House canals. And yes, the Forbstown Ditch is in poor repair. North Yuba did not put effort to maintain it in years. South Feather offered to fix it and bring capacity up to the needed standard in 1 week of work. We've all seen the letter. Even last year, when irrigation water was not served, North Yuba left 7 CFS of space unused in the ditch for 5 months. That is a nice amount for the irrigators. We would have been very happy with it. If it's a drought, we customers in the area of use should actually be served because we will need the water this summer. And this Central Valley allocation does not apply to us. We are customers of a water-rich region. We are just not being served. When we need water over 3,700 acre feet, which is expected in a drought, district can pay for this in a heartbeat at the cost of 1 month of their lawyer bills. We are down to the wire. My neighbor's well is collapsing. The decision to not serve us can come in a few weeks. Please help us if you can. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next, Mr. Campbell.
Hello, and thank you.
Morning.
I'm a resident of Maidu Trail in Dobbins, and I wanted to let you know about an event that took place on October 24th, the day of the big rain event that we had here. The ditch that, there's about 700 feet of ditch that goes through my property and then continues to my neighbor's property. That ditch backed up on my neighbor's culvert and overflowed, and a tremendous amount of water went down his driveway and then onto Maidu Trail and then continued on into Marysville Road, taking most of the gravel from the Maidu Trail onto the Marysville Road ditches, or whatever it is that's on the side of the road. As a matter of fact, there was so much water there that when we did call the North Yuba Water to come out, the worker was actually, and I'm going to get down on my knees, trapped into the ditch. His leg got sucked into the ditch. I don't know why he got in. He was up to here with water and had to be rescued. Took 2 to 3 men to pull him out. I called the North Yuba Water District and I've emailed them and I've never had a response. Just wanted to talk to them. I just think it's part of their responsibility, and I would imagine they would have insurance to maybe try to help with the loss of gravel and road work and so on. Basically, see, a minute left. Basically, I just wanted to let you folks know that I feel like there's no response. They don't care about me. They don't seem to care about most, in my opinion, they don't seem to care about, you know, what took place that day. And so I really appreciate, you know, you folks allowing me to come up here. And I realize that, for full disclaimer, I'm not a customer. I would like to be a customer, but you know, I've never attended a meeting like this before, and it was only through, you know, discussing this with members of my community that I found out that you folks would entertain somebody like myself to come up and discuss with them. But if there's any questions, if anybody needed photographs, I've got photographs of the damage of the river. You know, my neighbors are willing to comment, and so thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Just a quick comment. If you're not receiving a response from the staff at North Yuba Water District, I'd suggest maybe reaching out to the elected board members and to see if they'll provide a response to you. So that's all. That's typically my recommendation to folks when they reach out to a government entity and don't receive a response, is to point them toward the electeds for that.
Would you recommend doing that during a meeting such as this, or individual emails? Or
I actually typically recommend individual reaching out to them individually and having conversations with them. That's usually the most effective way.
Thank you very much.
And that would probably be in advance. Does not have to be at a board meeting. Just contact them directly.
Telephone, email.
Telephone, email.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, we have one public comment online as well. Mr. Gideon.
Great, thank you. Mr. Gideon?
Yes. Do you hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share my working relationship experience with the North Yuba Water District. My name is Gideon Beinstock. I am the owner of Clos Saron, which is a family-operated vineyard and winery in Oregon House. We produce high-quality artisanal wine that are sold mainly out of state on the East Coast and exported to Europe and to Canada. We farm 6 acres of vineyards, both on our own land as well as on our neighbor's parcel. Our own land is not entitled to, does not have access to district irrigation water, but the neighbor's is. Our location is at the
I don't know if you can hear us, Gideon, but your video just cut off from your
affected by
internet.
any shortages or can you hear me? I turned off the video.
Yes, that seems to
Do
improve.
you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay, I'll start all over again. Thank you for the opportunity to share my working relationship experience with the North Yuba Water District. My name is Gideon Beinstock. I'm the owner of Clos Saron, which is a family-operated vineyard and winery in Oregon House. We produce high-quality artisanal wine, which are sold mainly out of state on the East Coast and exported to Europe and to Canada. We farm 6 acres of vineyards, both on our own land as well as on our neighbor's parcel. Our own land does not have access to district irrigation water, although we would like to, but the neighbor's is. Our location is at the far end of one of the district's irrigation ditches, which I believe is number 3, which means that we are first to be affected by any type of shortages or disruptions to water supply. Just in general, vines require very frequent watering when initially planted for the first 2 or 3 years, and it gradually decreases over time until very little. In 2011, we developed and planted 3 acres of vines on our neighbor's property, which were designed to be watered by the district water. That is 4,500 vines planted at the cost of $12,000 for the vines plus labor, roughly $20,000. In 2012, at first year of the great drought, as soon as the state announced the drought officially, our district turned off the irrigation water, which translated into a loss of about 80% of what we have just planted. We proceeded to connect our own irrigation system from our own property to the new vineyard to ensure their survival in the future. Our own vineyard, just to say, our own water comes from our own wells, which are not exactly very strong. Between 2013 and 2021, we have gradually managed to replant the whole 3 acres as much as our budget and time allowed. We are a very small operation, so it's very tough. Initially, in those years, there were like 2 years of collaboration in which the general manager of the district did come down and showed interest and tried to listen to us and work with us. But from 2015 and on, that has stopped, and the water supply schedule and volume turned inconsistent, unreliable, and frequently interrupted. A number of these years, there was no supply at all, and other years were cut short. The season was cut short. In result of that, our yearly costs in terms of our own well pumping and irrigation pumping for the system, our yearly costs increased by about $1,200 a year. The increased use of our own wells puts them at a greater risk because many wells in our area, including my next door neighbor, have gone dry due to the persistent droughts. For us, this is an existential risk to our business and family livelihood. I have attended and voiced my concerns in a number of the district board meetings over the past 10 years, and I have been alarmed and shocked by the opacity of the decision-making and overt disinterest in and lack of response to any public interest, any public input, any request for information, and any voiced interest. There is just no response.
Can you please wrap it up, sir?
I did. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much. Okay, do we have anyone else? I figured out we forgot to read the, I forgot to ask you to read the public comment.
That's all right.
So I don't know if we still need to do that or not.
But I do not. So
okay.
There's no other public comment at this time.
Okay. So thank you everyone that participated in public comment today. We appreciate hearing from you. Next up is consider finding by a majority vote under Government Code 54953E3 that a result of the continuing COVID-19 emergency that the board has reconsidered the circumstances of the state of emergency. The board reviews prior findings that meeting fully in person would continue to present imminent risks to health and safety of attendees, and the authorization for meetings to be held by teleconference pursuant to Government Code 54953E1 is renewed. So is there any public comment on this item? Okay.
Through the chair.
A board comment, I'm anticipating.
No, I have a quick question, and it's only because obviously if we're voting on it, we'll know, you know my feelings, but I wanted to ask, my understanding is what the governor said at the end of this month, this part of the emergency goes away. So can we continue doing this, or does it end at the end of this month?
And I do not know. I defer to Mr. Shanahan.
Nope, there he is.
Yeah, Brent, I'll take that. It's uncertain what the governor's exactly going to do. We're monitoring it, and we'll let our clients know. Last I read, I think the governor's going to retain just a bit of the emergency authorization in place that may allow AB 361 to continue in effect, but we're monitoring it and we'll let you know.
Okay, thanks. I just read that that was one of the things going away, so I was just double checking.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thanks.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Okay, I have a first. Do I have a second? I'll second. And then prior to roll call vote, just a comment. I do know through CSAC that two two bills in the Assembly have been proposed to make permanent modifications to the Brown Act to allow board participation via remote meetings with some conditions without publicizing the location of the board members. So
through the chair, and I'd be happy to support a resolution in support of that.
So, and I know CSAC is looking for resolution, so obviously we can't take that now, but maybe on our next meeting we could actually consider letter of support or resolution of support for those items. So I can get staff the bill numbers for that. So, okay, so have a first and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's start with Director Fuhrer.
So again, I appreciate, but today would have been a great day. Vasquez could have logged in and been able to participate because of this motion.
Where is he?
He's
if
in training somewhere else, and so he did have something important.
Okay, that's fine.
But it would have been nice if he would have logged in today. And so I find it still useful. Okay. Yes.
Director Fletcher.
Yes.
Director Blazer.
Yes.
Director Matthews.
Yes.
Director Hasty.
No.
And Director Bradford.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
5-1, sir.
Thank you. Next, we will move on to the consent agenda.
I'll move approval.
Okay.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any public comment on the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none. Roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Mr. Let's start with Director Matthews.
Yes.
Director Bradford.
Yes.
Director Hasty.
Yes.
Director Blazer.
Yes.
Director Fuhrer.
Yes.
And Director Fletcher.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next,
Mr. Chair,
yes.
I'd like to ask that we move the manager's report up to now because I know Willie has to get down to the state. Okay, great. I just want to make sure.
If for some reason it looks like you're not going to have time, then let me know.
Okay, sorry about that. Thanks.
Thank you, Brent. Okay, so item 3, informational update on Airborne Snow Observatory ASO flights over the Yuba Watershed being conducted in the spring of 2022 and in the future. And Charles, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. Could you enable screen sharing?
Yeah, you should be able to do that, Charles. The bottom.
I want to hit
share screen at the bottom green.
Yeah, it says host disabled participant screen sharing.
One moment, sir.
Yeah.
There's 2 settings. Now try it.
There we go. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir. That looks good.
Okay. All right. Well, good morning. My name is Charles Jonk, and I'm a supervising hydrologist with Yuba Water. And I'm very excited to present to you today a new program that the Water Agency has invested in that is going to launch the agency and our partners into utilizing cutting-edge technology that will significantly improve water management of the Yuba River Development Project. And so this program is called the Airborne Snow Observatory, or ASO. ASO began as a demonstration project in 2013 by the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory in collaboration with the California Department of Water Resources. It's also happened to be the first year of my time with the agency. And so the purpose of this program was to improve the accuracy and estimation of snow depth, snow water content, and snow melt runoff coming out of the major watersheds in the western U.S. And so I've been following the advancements of this program every year during annual snow conferences held by the DWR. So really to fully understand the benefits of ASO, one must understand the current system of quantifying snow water equivalent receiving in the Yuba watershed. So I'm going to walk you through kind of how we currently measure snow and then the benefits of ASO and the program we're getting involved with. But really the science of snow measurement began in the early 1900s. You can see a picture of Dr. Church on the left. He was an early pioneer of snow measurement and invented the Mount Rose sampler in Lake Tahoe Basin. Fast forward 100 years to that picture on the right, you see the Yuba Water team still using a very similar steel tube to sample the snowpack. But now instead of using snowshoes, we're flying with a helicopter. You see the helicopter behind us up there, one of our snow courses. As the snow measurement technology has improved, real-time weather stations snow pillows were installed all over the western U.S. You see that picture on the left is one of our weather stations with a snow pillow. And as technology improved, satellites were used to estimate snow depth and how much snow is in the mountain. But the satellite technology really had only so much accuracy. And so fast forward to today, that picture on the right is a plane that uses LiDAR to measure the depth of the snow. So how it works is the plane has a depth sensor using LiDAR and also measures albedo. So it answers really two questions. One is how much snow, and the other is how much will melt. So as far as how much snow goes, the plane will fly in the summer and get an elevation of the ground to the plane, and then it will come back in the winter, and every month it will measure the height of the snow relative to the plane. So subtracting the summertime versus wintertime elevations will determine the snow depth. The second question is how much will melt. These planes also carry an albedo sensor, which tells us how much energy the snowpack is absorbing sunlight, and therefore how fast the snow will melt. And so from, let's see here. So the picture on the left is a map, a topographical map of our snow sensors and snow courses. This is specifically in one of the watersheds in the Plumas Basin. You'll see there's only a handful of sensors in the basin. And with ASO on the right-hand side, we get a complete picture of snow water content from the bottom of the watershed to the top of the watershed. The ASO still utilizes snow courses and all of our instrumentation in the watershed to model and estimate SWE for the entire watershed. So onto the California, so the ASO program. Like I said earlier, ASO began in 2013, and it began in the southern Sierras, mainly from the Tuolumne down to the Cahuilla watersheds. And funding has become, as the acceptance of the technology and improvement in accuracy, funding has become more available with the state. And this is the first year where the state is flying also the Feather and the Yuba and the Truckee watersheds. In the future, as more funding becomes available, the state would like to fly the entire Sierras, including the Upper Sacramento, McCalmy, and any other watersheds that it hasn't captured so far. So for this spring, Yuba Water has partnered with the Department of Water Resources to get 3 flights in the Yuba. Yuba Water is funding 1 flight, where DWR will be funding the other 2. Additional flights are planned in 2023 and beyond, with Yuba contributing a local cost share, with DWR providing the vast majority of funding, and some U.S. Army Corps of Engineers funding as well. So some of the benefits of this program are from the short and long-term runoff forecast improvements. ASO was recommended for the Yuba and Feather in the FIRO work plan to better understand the spatial extent of snowpack and specific runoff potential upstream of reservoirs and within the Yuba Feather watershed. It also supports the short-term forecast related to atmospheric river events, and it will minimize the uncertainty in the rain on snow component of runoff during warm atmospheric river events. And actually, the there's a 2020 Scripps study that found that the snowpack runoff contributed to an average of 37% of additional runoff during the Orville Dam event. So it's just reiterating that the snowpack can have a huge influence on warm storm events, and by having a more complete picture of snowpack in the watershed will improve the short-term forecast. For the long-term forecast, it will provide better water supply reliability for their Yuba Water member units and the people of Yuba County. By knowing how much snowmelt runoff will contribute to filling New Bar Reservoir and or flow past the Yuba River at Smart Slope Gauge and Millbright. Additionally, understanding the spatial extent of snow water in the watershed will help us adapt to climate change. With climate changing, we're seeing snow line elevation increasing, as well as snowmelt shifting to earlier in the spring. The old statistical relationships between snowpack and runoff are becoming less reliable. And again, just we'll have the benefits here. We'll have additional operational partnerships with our local, state, and federal partners to implement this program and use the data. So really, that's all about what I have here. If you have any questions, I know John James is on the line, but yeah, his last slide is just here. They're my kids, the next generation of measuring snow. Thank you for your time.
Awesome. Thank you, Charles. Any questions from the board?
That's the best ending of a PowerPoint I've seen in a long time. Nice job.
Okay.
It is. Yep. Awesome ending, and excited to hear about that. This is a partnership too between us and DWR. So always glad to hear about partnerships. So
I guess the one comment would be, will this help the forecasting for this year to get the snow melt right?
That's a great question.
Charles, what is the timing of these flights this year?
So we're wrapping up the contract right now. It's almost complete, and we're hoping to get a flight this week, but it's dependent on weather. And so if we had one maybe by Friday, it could help with the B120 forecast. It would be the first flight in the Yuba. There's going to be some adjustment to using this data, but I think it will definitely certainly help. If not for this March B120, definitely for the April B120.
So Charlie, depending on the timing and actually getting the flight, it very well could help this year. I think that the state's going to have to learn how to incorporate this extent data, or basically the area that the snowpack is covered, into the B120 forecast. That's going to be a process. So that may not be till next year that we actually get it into our B120 forecast that shows what we have to discharge for the Yuba Accord. However, it will be beneficial for us for actually being able to determine what we think internally the runoff to New Bullards Bar will be. So it'll be beneficial, but it may not be regulatorily beneficial this year.
Is there any
Agreed. Thanks, Willie.
Is there any off ramps in the Accord for errors in the 120 report?
There isn't currently any type of an off ramp. The only real thing you can do is a temporary urgency change petition.
Oh, and that's worked in the past.
It has worked. It's not necessarily snowpack or runoff forecast dependent. It's more drought relief dependent, or a drought relief ask.
But it could be tried.
You could ask for anything basically.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. I wouldn't mind. Okay, great. We'll skip ahead to manager's report.
Okay, sorry about that. I do have to attend a state board meeting at 11. I want to be able to get there, and you guys are gonna have a lot of questions for Terry on the next item. So New Bullards Bar is at 663,000 acre feet. We're doing well. I think one of the issues this year is very similar to last year, and that is the snowpack. And we have a decent snowpack, something around 55 to 65% of normal right now. But like last year, is that snow going to make it from the mountains into the reservoir? And we're experiencing different types of springs. And Brent and I were on a NACWA drought management call this morning. And one of the questions was, you know, are we studying the dryness of the soil? And do we have more information on that? And this is all new stuff. There are soil probes out there. We have some in the Yuba Watershed. There's some in the Feather Watershed. But this is data that we can't trend for 50 or 100 years like we can with precipitation and snowpack. So this is all new information. In addition to that, there's other variables that determine how much snow actually runs off and makes it to the reservoir. That is the extent, like Charles said. We put our snow gauges where it snows, but there is a major benefit to snow in lower elevations or on different sides of mountains where our current fixed snowpack sites are. So that's where these aerial snow inventories will benefit us. In addition to that, there's the soil dryness that I mentioned. Then there's also the transpiration that the vegetation goes through. Are we seeing earlier budding of, you know, the conifers in the forest? Are they taking water up earlier in the season because it's drier and warmer earlier in the season? And then lastly, are we not seeing the snow make it to the reservoir because we're not seeing as many warm spring rains? And does that warm rain actually capture the snow, melt it, and put it into the reservoir? When, let's say, you have 10% less warm spring rains, maybe that's a correlation to less snow into the reservoir. So these are all things we need to start looking at, and we are. Soil probes have been installed. We're doing the aerial extent flights. This is information we're going to have to incorporate over time. You can't just snap your fingers and have a data analysis with one set of data. So Randy, you look like you're gonna ask a question.
I am, through the chair. So that also leads me to the number of trees in any given area to see, is there a major impact that comes back to the reservoir? We have the 15,000 acres that we worked on at the higher elevation. Is there a way to monitor the amount of water that's actually in the soil, in the depth, through the flow, that would indicate the positive, negative, or neutral effect of what we've already done?
Yes, absolutely. Blue Forest and UC Merced are working on that. That's part of the agreement on that initial project and will be on subsequent projects. But now it's a great point. We're starting to develop trends. We're able to analyze that data and look at what the benefits are to the work we do. And the conclusion I saw, and this is just, you know, on the annual reports we get from them, is that there will be a benefit in the area treated for the first several years after a treatment and restoration, but then the vegetation regrows and there needs to be maintenance of the forest for forest benefits, but also for water supply benefits, keeping it natural, basically allowing natural fire to occur, you know, if possible. So yes, there are benefits. We're getting more information. We also need to be able to maintain, or the land managers in the forest need to be able to maintain the forest once it's restored.
So we have the ability to extrapolate from that information, if it's expanded beyond that 15,000 to the 275,000 acres, that the end result is better water, more water that leads into the reservoir, that leads to the delta, through the salmon fisheries. Everything wins. Just monitoring will make the difference.
Implementing forest restoration will make the difference, absolutely. And I want to just remind everyone, this isn't a strategy to remove trees to increase water yield. It's a strategy to restore the forest to a more natural condition, which will increase water yield.
All comes together as a positive. Thank you.
Okay, that was a little tangent I wasn't planning on. At any rate, so New Bullard, no, that's great. New Bullard's bar is at 105% average year to date, and the inflow is 78% of average year to date. So we're doing well with where we are, but here again, you know, is the reservoir going to fill with the snowpack, and are we going to see any storms in March? That number is a little bit deceiving because it's been so dry and warm. Maybe we're at 105% because some of that snow did melt because it's been warm, except for last week's little cold spell. And so, you know, it might be a little deceiving. I wouldn't, you know, put a lot of claim in that number, but we're doing decent. Okay, as far as maintenance and operation goes, everything's going well. Units are running. We're generating with the water we do have that we have to put down the river. Things are going well. We are doing some concrete repair at the Cottage Creek boat ramp. John wanted me to remind you all that this is the driest January and February on record. So the 2 consecutive Januaries and Februaries combined, this is the driest on record for the Northern Sierra. I already mentioned we're at about 55 to 65% snowpack. Okay, on to business here. We're continuing to hire 5 positions at the agency. We're working on that. Some are due to retirements and people leaving for other opportunities and just additional employees. We're also hiring 2 temporary positions, 1 admin position and 1 for up at the plant for general help. Last Thursday, we had a meeting with Congressman LaMalfa. It was myself and Adam and Gary and Randy and Brent, and it was actually requested by Congressman LaMalfa. Adam put it together. He just wanted to understand our interests because he will be our congressman after this year. I would say the meeting went really well. It was an hour long. We had a lot to talk about. We didn't get through it all, so we will be setting up future meetings with the congressman to share our interests. I want to thank Adam for setting that up and thanking you 3 for attending. And the congressman really wants to get to know Yuba County again. He did represent us in the past when he was in the state, and he's interested in what we do and what we have going on. So it was very positive. Last week, our forecast-informed reservoir operations efforts were mentioned in a great story put out by the American Society of Civil Engineers in their Civil Engineering magazine. The article featured the Corps' efforts to survey all of their dams and see which might be good candidates for FERO, based on the work already done in California with us and others. We were also mentioned in the Appeal Democrat last week as a partner in the Yes to Yuba initiative and its efforts to spark economic development. We had lots of great engagement on social media last week during Engineer Week as we featured some of our rock star employees. Lots of sponsorships are coming up. The Lip Sync Battle is this Friday. We're sponsoring and have a team competing in that event. The Date for Women event is Saturday, as is the Botkai Parade and Festival, which we are also sponsoring. The Spring Fling fundraiser for the Farm Bureau is the 15th. And we also just signed on to sponsor the Wheatland High Sober Grad Night and the Wheatland, Plumas Lake, and North Yuba Little Leagues. Our next meeting is a regular Board of Directors meeting on March 15th. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I think we're missing, or Dr. Willie, we're getting like 28 million from the state this year under the accord for water we transferred to them. Part of that water was made available by the districts in the pumping their groundwater, which left extra water in the reservoir and water for our income. And I think that's a great story that we're able to help the state by using our conjunctive use programs. And could you also touch briefly on how the 8 districts are going to receive their water this year, primarily with the one district, BVID, not having wells where the other districts do? Is there a way that last year they were cut back to 48 CFS when they have a capacity of 65, and see if that, since they can't pump their deficiencies, if there's a way that the 7 districts could help the 8th one?
Okay, lots of stuff there, Charlie. So yes, the pumping that we reimbursed the member units for last year did help in the carryover storage in New Bullards Bar. So when I say we're at 105% of normal year to date, some of that is because of the conjunctive use that we managed through last year. With regard to surface water deliveries, we're right on the edge of being able to provide 100% of our contractual deliveries. And when I say we're right on the edge, it really depends on what happens the next 6 weeks or so with the weather and the snow melt. So if we don't provide 100% of surface water deliveries, we'll be really close to providing 100%. Charlie mentions BVID's ability to pump, and they have capacity in their canal. And is there a way to allow them to put full delivery in their canal with surface water? And it really comes down to allocations. And if we have 100% allocations, then BVID can run whatever capacity they have available because they'll be 100% whole. However, if there are curtailments, they would have to work with the other 7 member units to strike a balance or negotiate, how the other member units might be able to provide for more surface water at BVID. It's really a discussion with all the 8 member units together.
It was just, if we could, it amounts to about 2,000 acre feet or less. If they could have that discussion before they start rather than in the middle of the season, it would help all of the districts. The reason talking about help is the rice industry is severely curtailed, and we're going to lose markets. So any rice we can facilitate in planting in Yuba County is a benefit to the entire industry.
I'll remind the board that, or let you know that we do meet with the member units monthly. Ryan and Charles and the folks that manage our water and the groundwater meet with the member units monthly to go over water conditions, surface water conditions, and groundwater conditions, and we can meet more frequently than that in periods of operational criticality and drought, and we do and have in the past. So we just had our monthly meeting last week, and we can have additional meetings if necessary or if asked by the member units, and I'm happy to facilitate special meetings if necessary.
Also, I noticed that this is the month we have the 5th Tuesday. I see in the schedule we have a water supply talked about in July. It might be much more beneficial to talk about water supply in April. And you might want to see how that also would be a time to educate the board on how the accord works, since it's crucial this year.
Thank you, Willie. You need to get out of here?
I do. I don't need to rush out, but yes, I do need to get out of here.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so next up is item number 4. Terry's going to be presenting on that, receive information regarding the strategic plan update process. So Director Matthews' comments is a perfect lead into that.
Sure, thank you. Thank you very much. So today is, I know you're really excited about this. This is the kickoff of our strategic planning update. I can see the excitement on your faces. So as you know, the strategic plan is your main policy setting tool for the agency. It's really sets the agency priorities and the guiding principles which drive our operational decisions. The strategic plan informs other policy setting tools you have, the annual budget, the annual 2-year budget, the capital improvement plan, the staffing, long-term staffing plan. But all of those really cascade down from your strategic plan. Every successful organization has a strategic plan, private, public, all the successful ones have it. Now, it might be in a small company, that strategic plan is just in the owner's head, right? I'm going to make a profit in my coffee house by making it cozy and comfortable and a place where people want to come and talk and have good food, right? That's a strategic plan, but it's not written. I don't want to imply that just because it's written, will the organization be successful? There are other counties out there, not Yuba, where they have a strategic plan that sits on the shelf. And really the strategic plan is, how do we provide these mandated services with the limited amount of revenues that we get without going broke? I mean, that's really their strategic plan. So our current plan was adopted in late 2016. It was for the period of 2017 through 2022. We updated it with minor revisions in 2018. So now's the time we get to do the strategic plan. I think a strategic plan is especially important for a local government agency, and especially one like ours, a special district. It's one way with the public can really participate in what is the strategic vision and how do you want to get there? What does this look like in 25 or 30 years? It also is a way for the public to understand what's driving your operational decisions every year. I think it's especially important for Yuba Water for 3 reasons. The first one is we work on really big, really long-term projects. If you take the Marysville Ring Levee, we've been working on that for 25 years. Let's say flood risk in general, it's been longer than 25 years with a lot of government partners. And it takes consistent focus and effort every year during that 25-year period. But now we're getting ready to certify our urban areas for 200-year level of protection, one of the few urban areas in the state to achieve that. And it was because we had a strategic vision and a strategic focus and kept working on it every year. The second reason I think it's important for us is because all of our revenue is unrestricted. Now we have the Agency Act, and of course we have to spend within the areas in our Agency Act. But you folks at the county, you've got a lot of restricted revenue funds, right? I'm guessing that it's probably less than half of your overall budget is actually discretionary funding, because there's funds that come in. Let's say the gas tax money comes in, has to be spent in the road fund, right? You get lots of money for health and human services programs that have to be spent providing those mandated services. You don't get much say over how you're going to spend those. At the Yuba Water Agency, basically all of our revenue is discretionary funding. And so it makes it, to me, even more important that you're letting the public know what your priorities are and where you're going to spend that discretionary funding. And I think the third reason is, just like we have big projects, we have really big long-term goals. And those kinds of goals, you don't get anywhere unless you set the goal and you keep working towards it. Again, there are other counties out there, not Yuba, that does things like, oh, economic development, that's really important this year. We're gonna really go after economic development. And then let's say it's a couple years later and economic development isn't a priority. So we're not gonna spend any money on it. We're not gonna do anything with regard to economic development. And then economic development comes up again. And so what's happening is there's not any really forward progress. There's a lot of side to side. And 25 years later, that county looks exactly like it did 25 years ago, maybe with a little more wear and tear around the edges. And so that's another reason why I think it's really important for us to establish a really good, strong strategic plan. Don't get me wrong on the changing directions. The board certainly can change the strategic plan whenever it wants to. To me, it's good to know what you're changing it from. And it's good to be able to look at, okay, what are the consequences of changing the strategic plan? So today we are proposing a schedule of how to do that. Instead of torturing you with a couple full day or several full day sessions, what we're proposing is we take this in chunks, little pieces at every board meeting. So there are 6 strategic priorities that we currently have. So we would take one of those at every board meeting and really give you the opportunity to go through, why is it there? What have we accomplished in there? What are the projects that we're still working on in each of those? And then have the discussion and make the changes that you'd like to make. So the schedule, which I think gave you a copy of and was attached to the agenda item. We really kick it off on April 5th. I just want to point out a couple things about it. And April 5th, and that would be a little bit longer session after a regular board meeting in the morning and then a special board meeting in the afternoon where Mitch Rosenberg would come up and work with the board again on a couple, going over things that you talked about at our last workshop meeting, and then also doing things like the SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunity, threats, to really set the stage for the strategic plan. So then it goes pretty much every meeting. It'll be probably an hour. A couple of them might be a little bit longer to really tackle a different portion of the strategic plan. I do want to point out that I think you have a couple of longer sessions. One is May 17th. Unfortunately, that I'm bringing it up that now Willie's gone, but May 17th, it would be a nice long closed session where Mitch would come up and do get the board input on a performance evaluation of the general manager. Another, I think it's going to be a little longer, is August 2nd. And that's where we're dealing with community impact and economic development. I think it's going to take a lot more discussion and analysis for you. In 2016, in the last strategic plan we had, we weren't really thinking that much about economic development at the time. So I think that might be a little longer. We put 2 hours for that. We didn't plan anything for the special meetings. So those are available still for special topics, as Director Matthews, you pointed out, for one at the end of March on the Accord and water supply.
I guess my comment would be flood risk reduction and water supply are our two major areas, and yet we only have it for 90 minutes and put together. It looks like we're shorting our main mission. My personal comment.
I appreciate the input. We'd be happy to separate those out. Honestly, the reason why I think that we could do that is because those are our oldest and longest standing strategic priorities as well. And so you've done a lot of discussion and work of those. But if we don't get them done, then we would be able to take a special meeting and do the other priority. I don't mean to suggest at all that it's exactly opposite. It's not that they're less important. They're actually so important that we've spent a lot of time over the years on them. The other thing I'll point out is that you'll notice that we've scheduled some project updates. Ellis Lake, and these are all tentative still, but Ellis Lake update on the 19th, maybe the biomass plant, economic development. We're trying to schedule those so that you have a thorough understanding of where the project stands right now as you go into the discussion on the strategic priority. And so what we will do is provide you with kind of a one-page summary during that item on the agenda that you could take notes on and then bring with you when we have, for instance, the community impact discussion, so that you're all up to date on where we stand on all the projects. So with that, I'd be happy to have any input on the schedule, any changes you'd like to make, or any comments.
Input, comments from the board?
I know you made a statement that sometimes strategic plans just end up on a shelf. I've seen a lot of that over the years in various places. So, and being new, is there some various stages where you go back and keep checking on the progress of the strategic plan, or that's all part of the plan?
Yes, just so you know. Yes, and we're continuing to build not only feedback to the board of where we stand on everything, but building it throughout the organization. So for example, all of the directors, so for my area is the administrative area, I have a business plan that comes directly from the strategic plan. And my job is to carry out the parts of the strategic plan that have to do with administration. And then the managers that work for me, their goals cascade down from what's in my strategic plan. And we're developing a system where everyone in the organization has a business plan that really rolls up to the strategic plan. And we'll have coaching and just so everybody understands, everybody in the organization understands what the strategic plan is, what we're trying to accomplish, and their important role in it.
And I'm sure there's various time spans before there are updates, depending on which departments and the overall updates.
Yes, we generally update our business plans once a year. Sometimes it's like the strategic priority on flood risk reduction and water supply. I mean, we're going to have You have the same goals for a really long time.
But at lower levels, like in some of your departments, sometimes you may have to update them monthly just on, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the plan or the strategy is that folks look at them with their manager every 3 months.
Yeah.
Through the chair. So strategic planning, I love it. Probably one of the most important things the board can do is to help set the pace for staff, to let them know where do we stand, what's the input that we can give you within the limitations of what legislation has passed in our guidelines. I don't think over the last 7 years that has ever really been discussed or disclosed. It's been a matter of picking through to find out what it is and try to interpret. I think a couple of us have had that discussion with legal. What does it really mean and how do we utilize it? So I might recommend that we have a very clear or clearer picture of what's already established by the state in our mandate, what we can and can't do. I would highly recommend that. Any strategic plan that I've ever tried to place either in my brain or on paper or on a napkin is always flexible to the times. And as we all know, the last couple of years has messed it all up. Everything went to heck. And as a result, you obviously have to be flexible to get through any crisis situation. And I think it's really important for the public to understand our limitations. We are not gods. We do not have a magic wand, and we do have limitations. We certainly want partners in things that we can influence with the rest of the county, and that's our mission, is our county. We have a state that it is a partner in sort of, because they're big and they're powerful and we need to work with them. But it is our county that we focus on, and that's what we're trying to accomplish. So again, some clarity in some of our meetings. Unfortunately, I cannot attend maybe one of the most important meetings on April the 5th, unless it is possible to attend by Zoom, which I would be more than happy to spend that time if that is possible. So just comments, thank you.
As much as I really enjoy strategic planning, not sure it's a really good part of your vacation. But thank you. We'll work on that.
Through the chair. Yeah, I just want to say that the agency would not be where it is without strategic planning. I remember strategic planning back in the 90s, kind of put in place the process to get us here, the process to build our own operational and not be a part of PG&E. And I want to say, I mean, we went through a crisis, and I think this agency continued its strategic plan. I don't think we missed hardly a bump because we're specific. We have it in the strategic plan, and we continue. And I think that our people, you know, our team knows what the mission is. And so there's nothing more important that we can do as a board than to set the strategic plan and then let our team do their amazing, miraculous work. And so I look forward to continuing this process. And thank you, Terry, for, I think that how you're setting it up is really a nice way to do it, because it gives us, it's not just one day, it's a lot of time for us to think about each one of the issues. And so I just really appreciate it and look forward to going through the process.
Anything else?
I understand how some of the projects we do relate directly to both our 6 points that we're aiming for and to the scope of the water agency in general. Flood risk reduction, I would love to see us fix stormwater drainage in Linda and Olivehurst, which I think falls directly in line with that project. There's other projects that we do that seem more tenuous, and I understand the connection, Blue Forest, where we clean up a forest so that it then doesn't impair water later, but it's not a direct, it's more tenuous. And I think that same sort of reasoning would be able to be applied to things like evacuation bridge or other things that are necessary and would spur us on to one of the elements of the 6 is economic growth, I think. And again, there's not a direct link between the Water Agency Act and that particular point. Am I mistaken?
There's not a direct link in the Agency Act to any transportation infrastructure. That's correct.
To economic development.
Oh, not.
And yet that's one of our 6 points.
Actually, yes, community involvement and community impact
is in the Water Agency Act.
No, is our 6th strategic priority.
Okay, but it's not directly, I'm saying, umbrellaed into the Water Agency Act. That point.
No.
And yet it's important to us, and
yes,
we find ways to connect it to the Water Agency Act. And likewise, I think that we can do that with a lot of other projects that I don't understand how we're dividing which projects, because they fit in the 6 points, may not fit in the Water Agency Act. Sometimes that link, as I said, with the Blue Forest is more tenuous, but it has a purpose in the long term. And I think that same thing should be applied to our transportation need. So I'd like to see that in our strategic plan.
Thank you. Shocked that you would bring that up. I'm kidding. Yes, of course. That is exactly, that would be kind of revert back to 2 things. One is what Director Fletcher was talking about, with really talking about what is allowed in the Agency Act and really going over the Agency Act. And secondly, it's these kinds of discussions that exactly should be in a strategic plan discussion.
Okay. Looks like no additional comments at this time, so thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to board member reports. So Director Blazer.
I think I'm reported out. I'm done.
I haven't done my filibuster for the day yet, so I'm here for you. We've had over the last few meetings, different farmers in the foothills talk about a problem there, and it's been different people, and it's been repetitively the same complaints. I don't know if we're the appropriate venue to fix the problem, and maybe it's not within our scope, and maybe it's not something it's our job to fix. But if we can somehow work to alleviate the ongoing issue there that people seem to be suffering from and seem to be coming to our meetings to talk about, I think we really should act if it's within our ability to do so. And I don't know if we have the ability to influence another separately elected organization or agency directly, but I would certainly like to help these people who have been economically hurt by the activities of this other agency.
Thank you for those comments, Director Fuhrer. I absolutely agree. So better write that down.
Yeah. It's on record. I have Jen back there. He's on it.
Brent?
Yeah, I'll also agree with Seth. Wow, Seth, you're getting a record here.
Your results earlier.
Yeah. I just want to reiterate. I mean, we just had our coordination meeting this morning for the North State. This is the worst drought year I've ever seen in my lifetime. And I think the water is, there's just not a lot of water. Charlie said it earlier. The reality is the rice in the Sac Valley is going to be dramatically less, which is going to hurt the economy of our entire region. Not only does it hurt the long-term market, but just this year, you're going to see higher unemployment because farmers are not farming. There's just not the water to do that. And so I think that, and that's going to persuade all kinds of problems that add on to that. So the environment's going to get hammered. Your ducks are not going to have water to have ducks come into the Sac Valley. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I just want you to keep remembering that this literally is the worst year and the most sobering discussions I've had in my history of being in the water. So, sometimes it doesn't feel like that in Yuba County because we're, to be honest, our people 50 years ago blessed us immensely with building this incredible project. But just remember that, when we talk about it, the rest of the state is in a worse position than I think they've ever been in. And so I just wanted to make sure that we always remember that this year, because it's, and pray for lots of rain in March. That's the answer. So anyway, that's all.
Thank you. Director Matthews?
I want to go a little bit deeper. The Agency Act, when it was first came about, promised water development and flood control. As we all know, the water development got put off. There wasn't enough money to build the dam and the infrastructure. So since that time, we have now generated money. We've done a much better job of strengthening our levees because in the last two floods, the water didn't go over the top of the levees, it went underneath them. So we have done a good job in that. In the water development, we're doing things like the forest health. And when you talk about forest health, you're talking about fires in North Yuba County. The other thing about forest health is developing more irrigation. Now, irrigation is just not one district. There's 3 districts that have to work together to make the North Yuba County healthier in the forest fire protection. And I think that it's our not only mission, but obligation to encourage that they work together. I agree, they're independent boards. We can't tell their boards how to do things. But if we can come up with ideas for the 3 districts up there to work together and the people understand how to work together, we might have a chance to make the whole thing come together. And we're trying to make that happen.
Dr. Fletcher.
Destiny. There it is. Trying to get this little green light to come on sometimes. So I do not dispute that one of our missions is water. What we do is water and water-based, whether it's flood or water. And I think we need to be very supportive wherever we can do that. Several years ago, I brought to staff from this board that we should be supporting. What does it take to make things better throughout Yuba County? And part of our strategy and strategic plan are those items that make sense, keeping in mind we do have boundaries. We do not have a magic wand nor the authority to take over other areas, nor do we want to do that. We were not elected to control others, but certainly to work within the guidelines of other rules and regulations. And how do we get there? Very strategically, in such ways that make good, positive sense. Whether it's from the forest to the floods, they all make sense, and they have adjusted, I think, over the years. 50 years ago, I don't think we were that concerned about the forest. There was no mention of the forest. There is nothing in the article, yet pretty clear that the connection is there, the obvious is there. Should we then connect to every project and every item within the county? Probably not. But from a discussion level, that's what strategic planning and the Agency Act come together to say, how does this really work? And how do we stay within our guidelines and our boundaries and yet become as proactive as possible? All of this wonderful discussionary items for the board moving forward. And I look forward to everyone that I can participate in and that I'm here. Again, extremely valuable to get on the same page, because staff, we do not want to send mixed messages. We want it pretty clear, staff and public, this is who we are and this is what we do to the best interest of our communities. So again, great job, Terry, and staff that put it together. We'll do our due diligence in working on this, and very good stuff.
Thank you. I don't have anything today. So with that, we will adjourn, and I'll just remind the board we have an ABP committee meeting scheduled for 10:30. So probably maybe after a 5-minute break or so.
Bless you.
And then a policy review committee when that ends, as I'm sure it will be past 11. So thank you.
Recording stop.